Hello, and welcome to the Rankin Report for Sunday, March the 23rd, 2025. Thank you for joining me today out here on the windswept heights of Highland Rise. It's March and it's very windy out this way, and you know the old saying about how it comes in and goes out. From the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, verse 32. And what more shall I say? I do not have time to tell about Gideon, Barak, Samson, and Jephthah, about David and Samuel and the prophets. One of the advantages about being my age, uh, closing in on age 66 or older, is the ability to see patterns in history repeating themselves, recognizing times when, in the words of the old song, everything old is new again. Welcome back to the 1960s, everybody, a time of protests on college campuses, Marxist radicals taking over administration buildings, rioting in the streets, promotion of sexual liberation, indeed today greatly and dangerously expanded, financial inflation, the crumbling of the Democratic Party over its embrace of these things, leading to the return of a Republican administration promising to put things right, and other fun and nostalgic things. The only real difference between then and now, of course, is the presence of the internet giving more of an immediacy to events and making the spread of ideas much easier. Plus, the music today isn't as good, but that's more my opinion, so take that for what it's worth. And just as in the time of my kidhood, the church in America is debating within itself its response. We know things are bad, but we dither over just how far to go in what we do. And therein lies the core of the real problem. And many of us, I fear, do not see the massive door God has opened for the church to step into, nor hear the call of God to rise up to do his work. You have to go all the way back to the time of the American Revolution to see a greater parallel to our modern era. In fact, if you look at the nature of those trying to hang on to political power now, we who are believers and political conservatives are the new counterculture. And we have full authority from the Word of God to speak to the situation. I will be posting two documents, the web addresses for two documents, in the comments regarding what happened in colonial times. The first being an article by the Wall Builders organization defending the revolution as an act of biblical rebellion. The second is a reference the author of the Wall Builders article cited to back up his point, or her point, an English translation of A Defense of Liberty Against Tyrants by Junius Brutus. And I would advise you, if you wish to read the latter item, that you stick to part 1 of the treatise, Whether Subjects Are Bound and Ought to Obey Princes if they command that which is against the law of God. That's the title of part 1. Unless, of course, you have the time to read the entire book. To reduce the argument to its fundamentals, first, the founders believed that all are alike under God, whether prince, noble, or commoner. Second, they believed that God established earthly governments to carry out justice for a nation under his commandments and laws, as per Romans 13, verses 1 and 2. Third, God raises up and casts down rulers according to whether or not they follow his commandments and laws. A good example is Saul, the first king of Israel, anointed by God, yet who lost his position because of disobedience to his commands, and who was succeeded by David. Another example was Athaliah, who not only unrighteously ruled over Israel, but tried to destroy the house of David, to keep herself in power. Fourth, the church is charged by God to bear witness to when government violates the commandments and the laws of God and to confront the king or princes doing so. Going back to Saul, the prophet Samuel was not initiating an unlawful rebellion when he came to the king and told him that he failed to carry out the Lord's commands, and, as a result, the kingdom was to be taken from him. Neither was the high priest Jehoiada, who hid the true king Joash until he was 6 years old and ordered the death of Athaliah, who had unjustly seized the throne. And so it goes for all the judges of Israel named in the passage we read from Hebrews and beyond at the beginning of this post. The bottom line of the founders was that when a king violates the laws of God and oppresses the people, violating the covenant God makes with the people, that ruler has essentially abdicated his or her rule. To use a phrase dealing with George III from the colonial period, he unkings himself. Therefore, for the people to resist an unrighteous ruler was to carry out the Lord's will. This is why who fired the first shot in the American Revolution is important. Some might argue the British did so against unarmed Bostonians in the Boston Massacre of 1770. Don't mind that scratching noise, that's our cat. But at the Battle of Lexington and Concord on April 19, 1775, militia captain John Parker reportedly told his men facing British troops, quote, "Stand your ground. Don't fire unless fired upon, but if they mean to have a war, let it begin here." The Patriots believed they were the wronged party and that the British were usurping their rights under both British law and the royal charters upon which the colonies were founded. Repeated appeals to the government and to King George himself only brought more repressive measures, and they had no choice left but to appeal to heaven and declare independence. In that order, I might add. In fact, a first proposed seal for the United States was a depiction of Moses commanding the Red Sea to close over Pharaoh and his army while the Lord watched over the Israelites with the motto, "Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God." Today, God awaits the response of the church in America to the oppression we have faced. Remember how during the COVID pandemic, congregations were shut down? They were considered non-essential services, but liquor stores and strip clubs were ruled essential and kept open. Pastors faced arrest if they resisted these measures. In the previous administration, which many believe unjustly seized power by election fraud, Christian parents who complained to school boards about the push for pro-transgender policies, hiding efforts to persuade kids they were in the wrong body from their parents, and books presented to young children that were seen as pornographic were labeled domestic terrorists. That fight continues today in some cities. And now, with the declassification and release after 60 years of the files of the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, we find the involvement of the Central Intelligence Agency, assisted by organized crime in Chicago, because the president thought to disband the CIA after it tried to push him to involve us in the Vietnam War and other such foreign misadventures. We now know that the pardons of everyone, plus the dog under Joe Biden, were not signed by him, but by the auto pen device, and are most likely not legally binding. The Constitution says the president must sign it. Scientific studies are now, albeit reluctantly, showing us how we have been lied to about the COVID outbreak and the so-called vaccines that are doing us far more harm than good. And who knows how else we have been lied to for generations. Is this not modern day repression? Are these not violations of our rights given us by God that government is supposed to protect and not usurp? So, what do we do about it? Before doing anything, we must recognize that while the news tends to focus on national level events, at least what we can see of it, we can move at the local level. Anyone in a position of authority, when they violate the accord that is made between voters and the people they elect, can undo their office. Many today have unsenatored, uncongresspersoned, ungovernored, unlegislatored, uncommissionered, unmayored, uncounseled, unboard membered, unsuperintendented. If I'm probably saying it wrong, but do you get the idea? This can move from the bottom up to reach the national level, not the top down. So our first move is to fight on our knees, pray and seek the Lord for what he wants, then act on it. If something is wrong and you can see it, for God's sake, speak up. Confronting injustice and evil is the heritage of believers, and especially those of us who are Americans. It is your right. Pray for the Great Awakening. No king but Jesus. Independence forever. That's the Rankin Report for Sunday, March the 23rd, 2025. Don't forget to continue to pray for the people on the West Coast, victims of the fires, and in the Carolinas, victims of fires there, and in Tennessee, North Carolina, and Florida, victims of Hurricane Helene. They still need our help. Don't forget to hit the like, share, or share buttons, or both, and the subscribe button if you want to see more of these videos. I want to apologize to those of you who normally follow us on Frank Social. I'm having some difficulty getting onto there to upload videos to that platform. And if anybody knows what the problem is, I'd appreciate you emailing me to tell me what's going on. Thank you for watching. God bless you, and have a great day.